Hi everyone, Luigi from Boreal Outdoor Innovations bring you a different video today. We get a lot of email about people wanting to get into industrial sewing. They're intimidated by it, they don't know where to start. There's a lot of information on the net about industrial sewing. So we decided to put together a short little video on where do we begin with industrial sewing, basically an industrial sewing 101. So the first thing we need to know is exactly what is industrial sewing. Industrial sewing basically references thicker material, more heavier duty material, like they do in, let's say, the fashion industry, where they are sewing very thin materials. So what makes a industrial sewing machine industrial? It basically, we discuss some parts are the feet or mechanism that makes contact with your material. So if I were to operate my sewing machine manually here, not with my pneumatics, if I were to move the wheel manually, you will see 1 foot raise up and then move downwards, okay? Basically, with industrial sewing machine, walking foot is that the material, there's always feet or a mechanism that holds the material for you, because it's much more heavier material that needs to be held down in place while you stitch it. That is basically what separates an industrial sewing machine from a sewing machine that you see at your seamstress that basically flops up and down and while it's sewing material. Okay, so that's basically the machine you are aiming for. The next thing you need to know is, what is your overall budget? You can spend a ton of money on this sort of stuff. So knowing your overall budget, including lights, cutting tools, rulers, all that stuff, all that has to be factored in before you can say, I have X amount of money to spend on this industry or this device. The next question you need to ask yourself is, well, what type of materials are you planning on sewing? Are you planning on sewing Kudor nylon, this outdoor fabric? Are you planning on doing more specialized material? This is some silica fire retardant material. Are you planning on working with webbing and all that good stuff? Or do you want to do it all? These are the questions that you need to ask yourself before actually looking at a store or looking online, shopping online, and narrowing down a machine for you. The next thing you need to ask yourself is, are you doing production work? Meaning that you're doing the same thing, sewing the same job day in, day out, or are you just tinkering around making some one-off products for yourself or for your friends? This matters because the more production you get into, basically production means pneumatic or non-pneumatic machine. So what I have in front of me here is Juki's pneumatic industrial machine. It's pneumatic, meaning that I don't have to operate things manually. I can do it via a air cylinder. For example, if I want to lift this up, I can just push on my pedal. It automatically goes down. It sews. You can see I push levers and it automatically does things for me, like cut the string and all that. You don't necessarily need that if you are not doing production. We are a business. We make our living from sewing, so we always use production stuff. If you don't need this, and you're looking for a simplified, smaller machine, then you can look at, for example, the Juki 1508 instead of here the 2810, which is its much larger brother. So knowing if you're doing production or non-production, that will definitely save you a lot of money and hassle. The more complicated the machine, the more expensive to repair and to maintain, and the mechanisms are more complicated. But a little bit more on that a little later on. How big of a parts are you sewing? So for example, if you're planning on repairing sails, which, we're talking about meters upon meters or tents, it takes more room, or the throat depth or the reach, long arm reach, that's what matters here. So if I take out my trusty tape measure and I were to show you here, this machine just measures over 13 inches. You don't necessarily need something that large if you're only doing small things, 6 by 6 inches, or, let's say 30 by 30 centimeters, if you will. So knowing what you are sewing is going to determine how big a machine you're going to get and how much money. The bigger the depth or throat, or the longer the reach, as they call it in the industrial sewing machine, the more money it's going to cost you. Okay. Next thing want to know is you want to get comfortable working with all these mechanisms. All these things here, if I were to take out those arms, all these are much larger, a little bit more complicated to thread the machine and sew the machine and apply the thread. So what you want to do is, regardless of what machine you get, you want to practice for 10 minutes or so unthreading the thread, installing the bobbin. Okay, anytime you get industrial sewing machines, bobbins are much larger. Okay, the mechanism is a little bit more complicated. There's more loops to feed through because depending on the type of material that you're working with, you may have to adjust it for tension. So whenever you have a little bit more different materials, the tension is a little bit more, you can fine tune more tension with larger machines, again, which costs more money. So again, referencing back to what I said before, what type of material are you working with? Last but not least, what I strongly recommend is you take a community college course and you practice on some of the basic machines. Basically, the concept is the same. The basics do not change, people. Whether you thread a machine for industrial sewing or for one of those smaller machines that you work on regular fabric, as like your seamstress does, the concept is still the same. Just may have, the industrial machines may have one or two extra tension mechanisms to fine tune your material. Okay, the basics do not change. Once you do that, put your saddle time in, practice making stitches, and then you can start analyzing your stitches. Do you see holes in between your material when you put a light through it? Is the needle too big? Can you move your threads side to side by diagnosing? This is how you can tell good quality stitching. All that basically is the same concept and principle that you take in some of these basic courses. There you have it, people. I hope this helps out on where to begin. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment. We will do our best to answer them as much as possible. And hopefully this helps a lot of people out to begin this Industrial Sewing 101. Take care, friends, and we'll see you on the trails.